Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again to Thursday's Theology. My name is Jeff, and I am your host. And today I am thrilled to introduce and have a good friend of mine, Ruby, a fellow youth pastor, on today. And yeah, we are going to still talk about Christ in quarantine, what Jesus has been teaching us during quarantine. But before we get into that, Ruby, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I serve up in Seattle, Washington as our youth and young adult pastor at Quest Church. And I've been there about 2.5, almost 3 years now, and served in another church in Washington for about 10 years, originally from the East Coast in Connecticut. And yeah, took the the long route to the West Coast and loved it. So it's just been a real blessing. And all my family's back on the East Coast, so I get back there quite often. But yeah, I've loved youth ministry. I've been doing it for about 20 years now. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah. And you don't, that's kind of rare. You don't hear people who have been in youth ministry for that long, because normally it's, unfortunately, the stereotype is, it's a couple years here, a couple years there, and then you either move on or burn out. Like
Yeah.
that seems to be the only two choices you have, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ruby, I've never asked you this, but living in Seattle, are you a Mariners fan?
I am, but I'm kind of funny. I'm the biggest fan of whatever I'm watching.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
do like the Mariners.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for everybody watching, I want you to know about the unifying power of Jesus, because we have an Oakland A's fan, and over here, I always get my orientation wrong. As you can see, I have a shrine. I call this my pagan shrine to the Oakland Athletics. So Jesus is the great unifier, because I am a diehard A's fan, and Ruby is a Seattle Mariners fan. So Jesus does have this unifying power about himself. So I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome.
So Ruby, the question that we've been diving into for this series has been, what has Jesus been teaching you during quarantine? So I'm going to throw that question off to you. What has Jesus been teaching you during quarantine?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. I feel like there's so many layers to that. Man, I would say that this season has really been about paying attention. I think that there is just so much hustle and bustle in ministry and just everyday life that a lot of the things that we've been occupied with or just had been the noise in the background have been stripped away. And so for me, I think I've kind of gotten down to this core, like essential of the beauty of being like on my own. I'm single, and so I'm at home quarantined by myself. And so it's just been a lot of time of prayer and like re-entering into the word. I've created some new rhythms that I really got off track with. And so I feel like my senses are heightened. So like the things that I'm seeing in people and just the things I'm reading are coming off the pages like in a whole different way. So I think just spiritually, it's been a beautiful like time to reconnect with God. I think personally, just thinking through like my own self-care. Ministry's hard and can be taxing, and so you just don't think about the ways that you put yourself on the back burner. And so just thinking through physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, mental health. And so I've just been really thankful for this space alone to really dig into that kind of stuff. I also like have loved how this season has brought me back to like what's core about me. And I love being with people. That's such a huge piece of my ministry is I like the events, that's fun. And, I like planning things, but oftentimes that gets so overwhelming that we forget to just sit with people. And so whether it's on Zoom or just random drive-bys to like my student places, I feel like relationally I'm diving deeper than I have before. And so I love that. I think this season's also caused me to like appreciate the people that are in your life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even my family, just reconnecting with them like through virtual, through FaceTime or,
Yeah. Yeah.
just texting. So that's been really beautiful too.
Yeah. And that's, wow. There were, like you said, it's a loaded question. And
Hmm.
every time I ask somebody else and I hear them respond, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's another thing that I've been learning. But yeah, what you were saying about self-care in particular, um, I completely hear it for you. I have trouble taking care of myself, and that's just part of my struggle in ministry is really taking the time to care for myself. And I've gotten to a really good rhythm of going to the gym. Like going to the gym was my like me
Mm-hmm.
time and taking care of myself. And then the gym got shut down. So
Mm-hmm.
like after that, I was just like, well, I'll just pour myself into my job. Like I'll figure out my job and like self-care will take care of itself. Like, but
Yeah.
that's definitely not the case. But I think one of the things too that you mentioned that has been really powerful for me to learn during this season as well is what you said about the noise. Just like the distractions have just kind of fallen away. Like I remember the moment that I started to really realize that this COVID thing was a big deal was when spring training for Major League Baseball shut
Hmm.
down, and at that point I was like, "Whoa,
This is serious.
this is serious." And I was thinking about it as time was going on especially in April and early May. I realized that so many of the things that we use to distract ourselves were just not available to us, like sports and live TV and just all these things were just not there. And all of a sudden it kind of forced me to think, oh, what's going on here, like what's going on within me. And so yeah, I hear you on that. Just the lack of noise really forced me to reevaluate myself and my faith and just where I'm at, and yeah, my relationship with God, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's been a wild wild few months because I think about where we're at right now, because we're in August right now, and to some extent it feels like it's been forever since March, but on the other hand it feels like it was just yesterday.
Hmm.
So it's just, my wife and I, Chrissy, just talk about all this all the time about time is just not a concept anymore for us.
Hmm. Yeah.
um yeah, and I remember March 15th was the Sunday that Community Covenant, where I serve, decided to shut down. It was just like, yeah, we're not going to have in-person service. And that was, again, another major indication of like, whoa, this is serious.
Hmm.
Um, Now, Ruby, let me ask you this. What's been one of the difficulties you have found in doing youth ministry during this time?
Yeah, so I serve in a church that's pretty regional. So there are people coming from all different directions in Washington. I have people that are like an hour and a half, 2 hours away, in different directions. And so it's just been hard to feel like you're reaching everybody. There's the core group of kids that are connected, but not everybody's able to access online calls, or they're just tired or drained out from being on Zoom all day with school or extracurriculars,
Mm-hmm.
or just family priorities, or families needing to use devices. So I quickly got over being hard on myself about that, because I'm just thinking like, okay, what do you need, and how can I like think creatively about giving kids access? So whether it's like just picking up the phone and calling a student you haven't seen, or um, I've been like doing random drive-bys to students that will probably never jump on a virtual call.
Right.
Um, and so just getting creative, with knowing that one size doesn't fit all for students.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that I hope that there's a lot of grace in this season,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for all people involved. But yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. The piece about just having to be creative, because I realized, and I know this wasn't the case, and I was super hard on myself the first month of quarantine, because I I just didn't know. My entire youth ministry revolves around relationships, like building relationships and being there consistently, and et cetera, et cetera. And like, once we couldn't meet in person, all of a sudden I was just like, well, how am I going to do this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
at no point in my youth ministry tenure have I ever been told, like, oh, this is how you do things during a pandemic. Like, that's just, it's, nobody has been trained for this. And I was
Yep.
really, really, really hard on myself that first month, because it seemed, and again, I know this wasn't the case, but it seemed like all other youth pastors had it figured out, and they had like an Instagram presence and a Snapchat presence, and like all these like really cleverly edited videos and all this digital content ready to go, and they were like hitting the ground running. And I was just like, I don't know how to do any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really, really difficult, but yeah, having to think creatively is required, especially during the season, because like you said, it's not a one size fits all. Like, every student is different. Every student has a different way of connecting, and being able to yeah, just build that and establish that relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because you said you're in like a regional church, so you have people all over. Wow, that's that's must be a lot of driving for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was like one Friday where I was just like, I'm just gonna jump in the car, and there's a bunch of families that are like single parent households, or families that have extra needs in their household.
Mm.
And so a coworker and I just like drove around and picked like 10 families to just bring flowers to. And
Oh,
I think it was good for my soul, and just getting in the car and driving, getting out of my place.
yeah,
But also just to make sure that, yeah, we can't like be all things to all people, but just reminding them that we do see them, that they're valued and important. And
yeah,
so that was just a real gift both ways. And I think, we're also, it's kind of funny. This season is erupting some new ideas and new possibilities. And,
yeah,
I think we're far more creative than we think we are. And so
yeah,
some of the problems that we had like this past year in ministry, we're now like thinking creatively about how to solve them. So regionally, it's hard to reach everybody or see people consistently at church on Sundays. So virtual access has provided a little more consistency, right? They don't have to
yeah,
go anywhere, so they can just dial in on a computer,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and we're trying to like empower the church to be more regionally minded. So
Mm,
caring for each other, being the church in their neighborhoods and communities. So
yeah,
it doesn't all land on going to a physical church building or
yeah,
relying on the pastor to do it all.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that is a huge, huge, huge thing that we need to be thinking about how to carry into the next season. Like, because the truth is, thankfully, that this is not going to last forever. Like, this pandemic is going to come to an end at some point. We're going to be able to resume in-person meetings and services and stuff like that. But I think that one of the things that has come up for me is what is it that God's teaching us to take into the next season? Because I think that there is something to be learned here in the now, in the pain and the discomfort and the dystopia of our present, that we can take forward. And I think that if we just kind of like ignore it and try and get to the next season of everything being back to quote unquote normal, then I think we're going to miss a huge opportunity. And I think that that's exactly what you were alluding to, because I think for so long, especially for me, having to think creatively, I was so used to just the routine and rhythm of youth ministry. I could bank on a winter retreat. I could bank
Yeah.
on a teaching moment. I could bank on small groups. And now I have to be creative in thinking like, oh, well, what if we don't do that? What if we do something different?
Hmm. Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying like, we're going to go back. And I'm like, no, actually, we're going to go forward.
Yeah,
What has been normal will no longer be, because we all have changed, and
Yeah.
there's different priorities and values and interests that are erupting out of this season. And so, it's moving forward into a new, paradigm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I may have shared this before, because once you have a story or an example, you use it whenever you can,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things I've thought about to kind of describe this season is the idea that we are in a similar position to the Israelites in the wilderness after they were taken out of exile or
Hmm.
after they were taken out of captivity in Egypt.
Yep.
And the idea is that in scripture, in the story of Exodus, once the Israelites get out into the wilderness, all of a sudden they're just like, oh, well, why'd you bring us out here to die? Like we might have been slaves in Egypt, but at least we ate well, at least we had roofs over our heads and stuff like that. And I think that really struck me, because I think with so many people saying like, well, let's get back to normal, let's go back to how things were, let's go back to the way that things used to be, we're that's longing for what is no longer there. And
Yeah.
I think that if we focus too much on the past, we're not going to be able to understand or see the potential future that
Yeah.
that God is preparing for us.
Hmm.
Um, and that's why the Israelites wandered for so long, is because they could not comprehend a future reality that God was preparing for them.
Yeah. That's so good.
So, um, yeah, it's been a tough season.
Yeah.
um, and I think what has brought me a lot of solace is knowing that I'm not the only youth pastor out there that's have to dealt with it, or
Yeah.
have had to have dealt with it.
Hmm.
So, sorry, I'm distracted now because there's like a leaf blower going on outside. So, uh, I thought I had planned it just right where I wouldn't have to deal with any background, but that's okay.
Yeah.
This is not a professional editing thing anyway. So this is real life. This is life. Um, so Ruby, one last question for you before
Hmm.
we. What has been an unexpected joy that you have found during this season?
Hmm. Oh man, an unexpected joy. I think it's actually my students. My students, like, God's doing crazy things in them, and I just love getting to see new things blossoming out of them. I have a
Mm-hmm.
student who loves art, and so she's been creating all sorts of things, painting on canvases and doing like macrame, and she's been gardening, and other students who are picking up like playing instruments or making music. Um, so it's just been fun to kind of sit back in some ways and like see their leadership erupt, and see their creativity, and them like exploring who they're created to be, and
Yeah.
um, so it's been just beautiful, like seeing that revealed, and unveiled in their lives. So that's bringing me a lot of joy. And then I feel like even more so now, like just being connected to family, it's weird. Like we used to never call each other. And so now we're like trying to make it a habit to like FaceTime and check in because we're so far away. And so it's been fun to just watch like my nieces and nephew grow up and just hear them interact and engage. My dad FaceTime for the first time. We're like, is this even gonna work? And so
Yeah.
it's fun to see that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the unexpected joy for me in the season 2 has been kind of a reimagined way of being with my family.
Yeah.
Because even though we're all still on the West Coast, I grew up in Oakland, and that's where my family is all at.
Hmm.
Um, Only about 5 hours away from where I am right now, but just with the busyness of life and ministry, and you hardly find time to talk. And
Yeah.
we have a standing Zoom call at 12:30 every Sunday afternoon, where we all just
Aw.
hop on and have lunch together. And it's been great because I have an uncle and aunt, especially, who I talk to maybe 3-4 times a year. And I've talked with them more in the past 4 months than I have in the past, previous 4 years. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. And I think one of the things that has also blessed me too has just been the unexpected care I've received from people. Because I've had friends who, I haven't talked to in a few months or maybe a year or more,
Yeah.
just text me out of the blue saying like, "Hey, how are you doing? Like, let's talk." Because I think everybody is so just used to communicating via Zoom now. I mean,
Yeah.
us right now.
Yep.
um, but I think one of the things that this season has really been great, because you can't really often say that. But one of the things that has been really great about this season has been just learning how to communicate well with people, because I think I took so much of that for granted before, that now I'm really understanding the and appreciating the ways in which we can communicate. For example, I did not like doing Zoom youth group. I mean, I just who does?
Me either.
So every week I would tell my students like, of course this is not ideal. Like, of course we don't want to be doing this, but I'm so thankful that we have the technology that we can.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine if this pandemic took place 20 years ago.
Yep.
Just we wouldn't have the same technological
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure. Um, so yeah, it's I think, I don't know how much you know about the Enneagram, but I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, so I try to find the silver lining in everything.
Yeah.
And I think that has been a benefit to me during this season, because the Holy Spirit has really pointed to, you know, there are blessings to be seen. There are benefits and things that God is doing in and among us, that is good. So it's not just a wasted season. It's not just a season where everything's going wrong. It's a season where God is still at work somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's so weird. I don't, is it an oxymoron? But like, like where, in these places of being isolated, we're even more so connected, and um, I just even think about what's going on in our world with all the racial tension and um, it's painful to watch, but to see like how people are engaging in a deeper way than they have before, it's just been really beautiful. There are a lot of like unexpected conversations that are coming out from folks in the church and even like from my past, like elementary school friends that are like texting me and they're like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or, can we talk about this topic? And
yeah,
so that's been really cool to see happen too.
yeah, and yeah, there's been some really great opportunities to come from that too. Because like I serve in Santa Barbara, which is predominantly white, and a lot of the racial issues going on around the country has just kind of set us up for some really great conversation unexpectedly, but some
Mm-hmm.
really great conversations. Like for instance, our lead pastor, gosh, again, time is blurring together, so I don't remember exactly when it was, but sometime in the last couple months, we got together as a church, and it was whatever month Just Mercy was free on
Mm-hmm.
Netflix.
Yeah, or like Prime,
Yeah,
Amazon Prime.
wherever it was free.
Yeah.
We encouraged the entire church to watch it, and then we got together for discussion groups, and that was hugely powerful. And like just not expecting to be able to have those avenues of conversation and people opening up and just being real about what's going on and how it was amazing. and
Mm,
and it's just I think going back to what you had said originally about, with so much of the noise just kind of silenced, we can't help but have to deal and think through some of the really big systemic issues that are before us.
yep. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just been a hugely powerful thing during this season.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So good.
yeah. Well, Ruby, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. And for everybody watching, thank you for joining us. Thanks for tuning in
Yeah.
for this conversation. My name is Pastor Jeff. I've been your host. This is Thursday's Theology. And remember, theology doesn't always have to be important. I can't even remember my own tagline. Okay, take two. Remember, theology doesn't always have to be difficult. It is simply the study of who God is. Take care. We'll see you next time.